The godfather of heavy metal and prince of darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, has passed away at the age of 76. He was just 19 when he started his career as the frontman of Black Sabbath. He also had huge success as a solo artist, and later in his life, he revived his career with the reality TV show The Osbournes.
A legend known across generations. A man who redefined rock and roll, who roared into the world's consciousness with wild eyes, snarling vocals, and a presence that shook the walls of stadiums. Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness.
He came to fame as the frontman of Black Sabbath. Then a new generation came to know him as a reality TV dad. Ozzy Osbourne's life was as unpredictable as his music was groundbreaking.
Known as the Prince of Darkness, Osbourne helped pioneer heavy metal in the 1970s.
His name wasn't just a brand, it was a rebellion, an era, a sound that carved out the very bedrock of heavy metal. From the gritty streets of Birmingham to global superstardom, he carried the weight of fame with wild defiance and occasional tragedy. And yet, as his final chapter neared, it wasn't the chaos or applause that lingered in his mind. It was something quieter, something more human. In the end, Ozzy Osbourne, the man behind the legend, wasn't thinking about platinum records or sold-out tours. He wasn't the unhinged frontman who bit the head off a bat, or the MTV dad fumbling through family chaos with a curse word for every occasion. In his last weeks, the spotlight faded, and the crowd's roar gave way to silence. What remained was a husband, a father, a man with a failing body, but a mind still fiercely tethered to one last mission, one last performance, one final moment of truth, and only one person could make it happen: Sharon. This is a story about more than music. It's about loyalty, about what it means to go out on your own terms, about the enduring bond between two souls who weathered every storm together, from Black Sabbath's earliest chaos to reality TV stardom, from medical battles to spiritual reckonings. This is Ozzy Osbourne's final wish, and it wasn't backstage antics or studio legends that defined his last days. It was dignity, legacy, and love. Facing the end with intention. The final weeks of Ozzy Osbourne's life weren't about the spotlight. They were about closure. At age 76, his body had been ravaged by Parkinson's disease. His legs refused to support him. Movement was fraught. He knew where this path was headed. But his mind remained sharp, his voice still gravelly with unmistakable grit, the same power that once electrified stadiums and ruled heavy metal. Despite his weakened frame, Ozzy's spirit remained anchored by something bigger than himself. It was during this time that his behavior shifted. He became quieter, more introspective. Conversations with Sharon turned reflective. Stories from his wild days with Black Sabbath, the chaos of family life, and the turmoil of addiction. Yet he also spoke of time running out. He wanted one thing, and only Sharon could help him achieve it. Sharon said he shared something in those days, a final wish, necessary for him to truly let go. She didn't reveal the details at the time, but she made it her mission to see it through. Ozzy passed on July 22nd, surrounded by his family.
The Black Sabbath lead singer, Ozzy Osbourne, has died at the age of 76. His family have announced this evening. I'm going to read and show you the statement one more time from his family.
Fans were stunned, but those closest understood. He hadn't drifted off. He had prepared to exit on his terms, supported by the woman who had stood beside him through fame and turmoil. Their bond, sharpened by decades of highs and lows, made that possible. The Sharon and Ozzy bond. Sharon Osbourne wasn't just Ozzy's wife. She was his manager, his protector, the person who held him in check. They met in the late 1970s when Sharon's father managed Black Sabbath. By 1982, they were married, and their relationship weathered scandals, addiction, and global fame. Sharon took charge of Ozzy's solo career and managed the household when their family became a reality show sensation on MTV's The Osbournes. Through chaos came intimacy, and through fame came partnership. Ozzy's Parkinson's, diagnosed in 2003 but kept private until 2020, brought new challenges. Sharon spoke candidly about the emotional and physical burden. She knew the end was approaching and became laser-focused on Ozzy's final days. "I've been doing this since I was 15 and I'm done," she said in an interview. It wasn't just a career statement. It was a preparation for life after Ozzy's stage. They spent those weeks not planning public appearances, but planning closure. Sharon hinted at Ozzy's wish, but kept it private. Still, his desire was clear, for his legacy to end on his own terms. Their children, Kelly, Jack, Amy, Jessica, Louie, were all brought in for those final moments. He reclaimed a quieter family life, shielded from media scrutiny, ritually cherishing the last conversations and shared laughter. Ozzy Osbourne was born John Michael Osbourne on December 3, 1948, in Aston, Birmingham. A working-class boy with no direction until music provided an outlet. In 1968, he co-founded Black Sabbath with Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward, a band that sparked the heavy metal revolution. Their self-titled debut album in 1970, with unforgettable tracks like Paranoid, Iron Man, and War Pigs, changed music forever. The world was still bowled over by the Beatles, but Sabbath brought raw weight, darkness, and theatrical menace. They sold over 75 million records in that era. Ozzy's time with Sabbath lasted until 1979, when substance abuse and erratic behavior led to his dismissal. Yet his departure didn't dim his star. In fact, his solo career took off with albums like Blizzard of Oz, 1980, and Diary of a Madman, 1981. Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, and later Mama, I'm Coming Home became rock anthems. He swept 5 Grammy Awards and remained relevant decade after decade. Through MTV's The Osbournes in the early 2000s, Ozzy and Sharon introduced their family to the public in a new light. What viewers saw was no dark prince. They saw chaos, dysfunction, humor, and humanity. Audiences bonded with a flawed rocker who couldn't stop dropping F-bombs or love bombs on his family. Ozzy's accolades are countless. Inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, both with Sabbath and solo, a star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame, and international tributes in Birmingham. These honors were more than symbols. They told the world that Ozzy became an institution. The return, the farewell, and the final curtain. Years passed, and Birmingham, the industrial city where Ozzy was born, transformed itself in quiet tribute. The city embraced its most famous son with events under the banner Summer of Sabbath, art installations, concerts, dedications. Local officials awarded Ozzy, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward the freedom of Birmingham, unveiled a commemorative bridge, and painted a huge mural of Ozzy near Villa Park Stadium. This wasn't a concert, it was a homecoming. Fans wrote online that seeing Ozzy perform in his hometown felt like once-in-a-lifetime stuff, and media described the scale of the event as unprecedented. Behind the scenes, though, Sharon had a deeper plan. Ozzy's final wish wasn't just to play one more show, it was the city and the setting where it all began. Only Birmingham could grant him that closure. Sharon hinted in interviews that Ozzy had made a deeply personal request, something only she could make happen. In private, she rallied contacts, gathered support from fellow artists, and quietly arranged the logistics. She knew the stage had to look more like a temple than an arena, and she aimed to bring together every bridge in his life, his bandmates, his family, fans from every generation. On July 5th, 2025, at Aston Villa's Villa Park, Sharon unveiled the show aptly titled Back to the Beginning. The original Black Sabbath lineup reunited for the first time in 20 years. Ozzy, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward took the stage. Supporting acts included Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Slayer, and Anthrax. 40,000 fans filled the stadium, and millions more watched via livestream. The world felt the weight of the moment, the last performance of a rock pioneer. Ozzy appeared on stage, seated on a black throne. Parkinson's had ravaged his body, but the roar when he raised his head proved something else. His presence remained larger than life. He began with, "Mama, I'm coming home." His voice cracked, not just from emotion, but from the realization that this was his final return. Then came Crazy Train. Though weak, his grit and talent remained undeniable. He whispered to the crowd, "You have no idea how I feel. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart." The crowd erupted. Black Sabbath's set included War Pigs, Iron Man, and Paranoid. The performance was short but intense, each riff resonating with history. Fireworks lit the sky as the band bowed together. The show wasn't a fundraiser. It raised $189 million for charity. But the real purpose was personal, to deliver Ozzy his last wish. He had asked for this. Sharon had made it happen. It was his farewell on his own terms, with the city that made him and the music he created. Over the following weeks, the shock hit harder when Ozzy passed away on July 22, 2025, just 17 days after that final performance. Surrounded by his wife, Sharon, and children, Kelly, Jack, Amy, Jessica, and Louie, he drew his final breath. The family statement read, "It is with more sadness than words can convey that we report our beloved Ozzy passed away this morning. He was with his family and surrounded by love." Tributes poured in from around the globe. The official Black Sabbath account posted Ozzy Forever with a photo from that last show. Ronnie Wood called him the undisputed king of heavy metal. Elton John wrote, "He was a dear friend and trailblazer, one of the funniest people I ever met. I will miss him dearly." Metallica posted a photo with a broken heart. Tony Iommi, grief-stricken, wrote, "There won't ever be another like him." Geezer, Bill and I have lost our brother. The music world wasn't mourning just another artist. They were mourning an entire era. The aftermath. Legacy, loss, and closure. Some fans questioned, was that final show the perfect farewell? Many answered emphatically yes. It wasn't just a concert, it was closure. It gave Ozzy and his fans a final moment together. Sharon had known his wish wasn't about spectacle, but identity. He wanted to reclaim Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, in the place that defined him. In doing so, he'd reclaimed his story, ending it on his terms. Ozzy had grown up in Aston, Birmingham, where poverty and despair taught him nothing, but music taught him everything. In 1968, he teamed with Tony, Geezer, and Bill to form what would become Black Sabbath. Their debut album in 1970, dark, heavy, dramatic, changed rock forever. They sold more than 75 million albums, setting stages on fire from London to LA. But Ozzy's trajectory wasn't smooth. In 1979, substance abuse and chaos led to his exit from Sabbath. He exploded into solo success with Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, giving the world hits like Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, and later, Mama, I'm Coming Home. He won 5 Grammys and influenced multiple generations. Sharon Osbourne had been there the whole way. She managed his solo career, shielded him during rehab stints, and navigated fame with savvy. MTV's The Osbournes let the world in on their family life. Wild arguments, tender moments, relentless humor. It humanized the rocker, making him lovable and relatable. Yet as Ozzy's health declined, Sharon switched focus. She canceled tours. She devoted herself to care. She managed him with fierce dedication.
I had a bad fall. I had to have surgery on my neck, which screwed all my nerves in. And I found out that I have a mild form of,
It's Parkin 2, which is a form of Parkinson's.
Ozzy had been diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2003, revealing it only in 2020. Watching him lose control over his body, legs that wouldn't support, voice weakened, mobility lost, Sharon carried the emotional load. She publicly admitted the toll, saying, "I've been doing this since I was 15. I'm done." It wasn't resignation. It was planning. Planning the final act. In those final months, Ozzy spoke to Sharon about something he needed, something that would give him peace. She remained discreet in interviews, revealing only that he wanted his final days his way. She became executioner of his final request, mobilizing fans, cities, artists. Meanwhile, Ozzy began to withdraw quietly. He spent more time in private family moments, reading poetry to grandchildren, telling stories to his children, reflecting on his decades on stage. He looked back with clarity, not regret. His love for music and performance never faded. His audience saw the ravaged body.
His final concert on July 5th in England raised more than $190 million, the highest-grossing charity concert of all time.
But on July 5th, they also felt the spirit roar back. He reclaimed the microphone, the throne, the darkness. He walked onto that stage as the same Ozzy who once tumbled off it drunk, late-night rants broadcast worldwide. Only this time, he showed he still had control over his legacy. When that final bow came at Villa Park, it wasn't just fireworks, it was catharsis. A closing chapter, a final message. I am Ozzy. I began here. I end here.
The godfather of heavy metal and prince of darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, has passed away at the age of 76.
And just 17 days later, he passed away. The sequence seemed predetermined. Grand finale, then silence. But to those who loved him, that silence was prepared. It was meant. Reflecting on a life redefined, Ozzy's final concert and his final fade were no accident. They were a carefully crafted farewell, a deliberate closing chapter that only he could envision and only Sharon could bring to life. This last performance wasn't just a show, it was a profound statement. It was Ozzy's way of taking control of the narrative, of saying goodbye on his own terms, and of giving a final gift to the millions who had followed, celebrated, and even criticized him over the decades. When the curtains fell on that night at Villa Park, the reactions poured in from every corner of the world. Fans filled social media with emotion, some tears of joy, others of sorrow. Critics debated the meaning of the farewell, weighing the power of that final performance against the many years of Ozzy's tumultuous career. Some argued that the grandeur of the concert risked overshadowing the complicated, sometimes messy life he led. The battles with addiction, the public controversies, and the wild unpredictability that often defined him. But even the harshest commentators couldn't deny one truth. Ozzy Osbourne was much more than the sum of his scandals. He was the living spark that ignited the genre of heavy metal. And that spark burned brighter than ever in his last stand. Though his body had betrayed him in those final months, weakened by Parkinson's and the ravages of time, Ozzy's voice remained indelible. Through recordings, broadcasts, and the eternal echo of his music, his spirit continues to reverberate. The streets of Birmingham still throb with the pulse of Sabbath riffs. Murals and monuments throughout the city honor the legacy of a boy who grew up amid soot and factories, only to become a global icon. The generations of musicians he inspired, thrashing guitars, pounding drums, and raw vocals, carry forward his influence, proving that his impact isn't confined to the past, but lives on in the furious energy of metal today. For Sharon Osbourne, the role she embraced in those final weeks was far more than that of a grieving widow. She became the guardian of a legend's legacy, fiercely determined that Ozzy's story would be told with honesty, respect, and heart. She understands that the final show is not meant to erase the challenges and missteps, but to illuminate the man Ozzy wanted the world to remember. Sharon promised her husband that she would make this last wish a reality, and she delivered, despite the immense emotional and logistical hurdles that such an undertaking required. Ozzy Osbourne's final act was not silence. It was the roar of guitars, the pulse of drums, the chorus of thousands echoing in unison. It was a stage, his throne, and a bridge back to the place where it all began. It was a moment of redemption, a farewell, and a homecoming, all wrapped into one unforgettable night. He asked for this, a concert in Birmingham, alongside the brothers who had stood with him through the birth of Black Sabbath: Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward. Not just a reunion, but a reckoning with the past and a celebration of what they had created together. That night was more than just music. It was closure, it was healing. For a man whose life had been shaped by wild excess and personal struggle, it was a chance to step back into the light, if only for a moment, and show the world who he truly was beneath the myths and headlines. When Ozzy Osbourne took his final bow on July 22, 2025,
Black Sabbath legend Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, dead at the age of 76.
the world lost more than a rock star. Birmingham lost a son. The metal community lost a godfather. But the legacy he left behind, the riffs, the voice, the spirit, remains unshakable. Thanks to Sharon's unwavering commitment, that legacy feels whole. It's no longer just about the man who bit the head off a bat or the troubled soul whose life was splashed across tabloids. It's about the artist who helped shape music history, the husband who fought alongside his wife, and the human being who demanded one last moment to be remembered on his own terms. Ozzy Osbourne's final chapter reminds us all of the power of agency, the right to close a story with dignity and purpose. It tells us that even the loudest, wildest lives can find peace at the end. And it shows us that sometimes a legacy is not just built on records and performances, but on the love and devotion of those who stand beside us until the very last note fades. The Prince of Darkness bowed one last time, and the world listened. As the echoes of Ozzy Osbourne's final bow faded into the night, a profound silence settled over the world. A silence filled not with emptiness, but with the resonance of a life fully lived, fiercely fought, and boldly celebrated. Ozzy was more than a musician. He was a force of nature, a storm that reshaped the landscape of rock and heavy metal forever. His journey, from a working-class boy in Birmingham to the unchallenged Prince of Darkness, was marked by wild triumphs and heartbreaking trials, but above all, by an unyielding spirit that refused to be dimmed. In those last days, as his body grew frail and Parkinson's disease tightened its grip, Ozzy's mind remained sharp, his heart steadfast. The final wish he entrusted to Sharon was not simply a request for one more concert. It was a declaration of identity, a reclaiming of the essence of who he was beyond illness and age. Sharon's unwavering devotion ensured that this wish became reality, gifting Ozzy and the world a farewell worthy of his legacy. The Villa Park concert was not just a show, it was a homecoming, a crowning moment that allowed Ozzy to stand once more in the spotlight, surrounded by the bandmates, the fans, and the city that shaped him. This final performance encapsulated everything Ozzy represented: raw energy, defiant spirit, and unbreakable connection. It was a reminder that legends don't simply fade away. They leave behind a trail of inspiration, a soundtrack that continues to ignite the passions of new generations. From the first heavy riff of Black Sabbath to the soaring vocals of his solo hits, Ozzy's music transcended time and genre, touching hearts and shaking souls. The millions who gathered that night, and the countless more who watched from around the globe, witnessed not only a farewell, but a celebration of a life that changed the course of music forever. Yet Ozzy's story is more than the notes he played or the concerts he commanded. It's about the love that anchored him. Sharon, his wife and steadfast partner, who stood by him through decades of chaos and calm alike. Their bond was the quiet power behind the legend, the force that made sure his final days were filled with dignity and purpose. Sharon's role in fulfilling Ozzy's last wish speaks to the profound truth that legacies are not built by solo acts alone, but by the people who stand with us when the music dims. As the world reflects on Ozzy Osbourne's passing, it's clear that his legacy is far from over. The music lives on, carried by those he inspired: musicians, fans, and the very city of Birmingham, where murals and memorials keep his spirit alive. His story will continue to be told, not as a tale of darkness, but as one of resilience, creativity, and the enduring power of rock and roll. And so, as the curtain closes on the Prince of Darkness's final act, the question remains: how do we carry this legacy forward? How do we honor a man who gave so much of himself to the world and asked for only one last moment in the spotlight? The answer lies in the music, in the memories, and in the hearts of those who still hear that unmistakable voice and feel the tremor of those heavy riffs. Ozzy Osbourne's final bow was not an end, but a beginning, a call to keep the flame burning bright. Because legends may leave the stage, but their echoes never truly fade. And with that, the story continues.